My name is Hoa Ha. I was born and raised in a small village nestled deep in the high mountains of northern Vietnam. There, people don't measure time with clocks, but with the crowing of roosters, the seasons of corn tasseling, and the scent of wood smoke curling through thatched roofs. Every morning, I used to sit by the window watching the mist drift lazily across the mountain tops. The sun hadn't risen yet, but the sound of a bamboo flute would float from somewhere far away, mournful, melodic, like a lullaby echoing through the valley. My mother passed away when I was still a child. She left quietly in the middle of winter, taken by a fever no one could afford to treat. From that day, my father rarely spoke. Then he turned to alcohol, leap, corn, wine, forest brews, anything that dulled the pain. I had a younger brother, often sick with a weak chest. I worked in the fields, sold vegetables at the market, sewed clothes for others. I did anything I could to buy rice, medicine, or just a little warmth. I never dared to dream of another world. I only wished each day would pass gently, that my brother would to go hungry, and that my father would to hit anyone when he was drunk. People in the village started saying I was old enough to marry. They said it like it was a blessing, but to me, it felt like a sentence. Spring arrived. The whole village buzzed with preparations for the New Year festival. Every household cleaned their homes, dyed clothes, and embroidered traditional skirts. I wore an old red blouse left behind by my mother, faded with time, but still holding delicate stitches at the collar. That day the sky was clear and the sun was kind. Children played around a bamboo pole. Adults drank and danced. I stood quietly under a blooming peach tree, holding my embroidery hoop. I hoped no one would notice me. I did too want to be seen. But a group of young men approached. Among them was the village chieftain's son, older than me, with sharp eyes and a mouth that never smiled. He stared at me too long, and then everything went black. A cloth was thrown over my head. Hands grabbed me. I was dragged away while people laughed and shouted. Some saw, but no one stopped it. It's tradition, but they said. I was taken to his house. They called it a wedding, but I never spoke a single vow. His mother gave me a set of clothes and told me, put this on, you're a wife now. My hands trembled. I dressed, not because I agreed, but because I was afraid. He didn't love me. He treated me like property. At night, I lay next to him in fear, my body tense, my heart cold. I didn't know I could say no. I was made to wake before dawn, cook, fetch water, work in the fields, clean, sew, stay silent. I wasn't allowed to cry. I wasn't allowed to write or call or leave. I disappeared from my own life. Then I found out I was pregnant. Morning sickness came first, then the exhaustion. No one asked how I felt. His mother scoffed, but that ain't what wives are for. He just laughed and said, "Bah, good, you're useful." I didn't feel useful. I felt like I was dying. I grew weaker with each passing day. My legs swelled, my back ached, and sometimes I bled. Still, I was made to work. One rainy night, I went into labor. No one took me to the hospital. No one offered help, except an old neighbor, a hunched woman with kind eyes who once told me she too had been married off at 13. She helped me give birth on the cold floor. I bit my lip, choking back screams. Lightning flashed as my baby entered the world, a boy wrinkled and crying. I looked at him and cried too, not because I was weak, but because I was scared for him. I knew if I stayed, he would become like his father. But if I left, he might not survive the cold, the hunger, the road. Still, I made my decision. I started hiding things. Lent money in cracks of wood, food at the bottom of the rice jar, cloth to wrap my son in. I waited for a night with no rain when everyone had fallen asleep. I carried my child across fences, past dogs, through the trees. My feet bled on sharp rock, he cried. I sang the only lullaby I remembered, the one my mother used to hum. We reached a small abandoned house, hidden on the mountainside. It had no door, a broken roof, and floors made of dirt. But no one yelled at me there. No one touched me without my will. We slept on my old coat. I watched the stars through the holes in the roof. I was terrified, but for the first time, I was free. In the morning, I walked to the stream to wash my face. The water was icy. My reflection stared back at me, pale, thinner, older. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but at least today I had chosen. Then I heard an engine. A silver SUV pulled up not far from the stream. A young man stepped out, whole in a white shirt, camera hanging from his neck. He looked around. Then he saw me. We locked eyes. He didn't look at me the way others did. There was no judgment, no desire, no pity. Just quiet recognition, like he had stumbled upon a story left unfinished. His name was Jack. And from that moment on, my story began again. The day Jack appeared felt unreal, like a dream that arrives too late, long after you've stopped believing you deserve one. He stood there beside his car, staring at me without speaking. I didn't know what to do. My son stirred in my arms, his little hand gripping the edge of my shawl. I held him tighter, suddenly afraid I had run so far to be alone. Was this another threat? Another man who would take something away? But Jack didn't come closer. He just raised one hand slowly, like greeting a wild animal. His voice was soft, careful. Sorry to surprise you. I'm just a traveler. I didn't know anyone lived here. I didn't answer. I could too. My tongue felt dry, and my breath was caught somewhere in my chest. He smiled, not the kind of smile that demanded anything. It was warm, brief, a flicker of kindness, nothing more. Then he left. Just like that, he got back into his car and drove off, wheels crunching the gravel beneath him. I stood still long after the dust had settled. My heart thudded strangely in my chest. That night, I could to sleep. The house creaked under the wind. My son slept beside me, his chest rising and falling, his tiny fingers twitching in dreams. I stared at the ceiling, wondering why Jack had felt different. Was it the way he looked at me? Or the way he did? The next day he returned. He didn't get out of the car this time. Just left a small plastic bag by a rock near the edge of the stream. Food, some baby diapers, and a bottle of clean water. Then he drove away again. No note, no name, nothing asked in return. I did to touch the bag until sunset. I was too sure if it was a trick, but hunger eventually won. My son needed the milk, I needed the calories. The bread was soft, the apples crisp, the water lying clear as glass. The next morning, I found another bag, and the day after that, a blanket. I began to wait for the sound of his engine without realizing it. I never told him to stop, but I also never told him to come. One evening, I finally spoke. He had stayed a little longer that time, sitting on the hood of his car, looking at the mountains, like they were some kind of ancient cathedral. You don't have to bring things up, I said quietly, my voice raspy from disuse. He turned, surprised but not startled. I know, he said, but I want to. I looked at him unsure. Why? He shrugged. Because I can. It didn't make sense. In my world, no one did anything without a reason, without expecting something back. But Jack was then from my world. He told me he was from the city, that he had taken time off work to travel, to photograph untouched places before they disappeared, that he had to expected to find this. I asked him, but find what? He said, but a story that mess. Over the next few weeks, we spoke more. Not often, not easily, but I began to open. I told him about my village, the way the fog clung to our roofs each morning, how children learned to climb before they could read, how girls were never taught to choose. I told him about my mother, about my brother, about the weight of silence. I didn't tell him everything, not yet, but I told him enough for him to see. And Jack, he listened. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer pity or outrage. Just listen, like he was gathering the words into a careful bundle he would to drop. He told me about his own life, the pressure, the noise, the emptiness that came with success. He said, Sometimes I look around at my apartment and wonder if I ever really lived in it or just passed through. I understood that feeling. One day my son reached for him. Jack was crouched by the stream, taking photos of dragonflies, when my son toddled toward him and placed a hand on his shoulder. Jack froze. Then he smiled, the same kind of smile I saw on the first day. No weight, no pressure, just something true. He didn't try to pick the boy up, he didn't try to charm me with kindness. He just let the moment happen. Later that evening, I cried. Not because I was sad, but because I realized how long it had been since anyone treated me like I mattered. Days turned into weeks. We built a rhythm. He came with supplies. We shared a meal, sometimes sat in silence watching the sky. My son began to laugh more. I began to breathe easier. But I never forgot that the world was still watching. The village might come looking. My past was taken. Reed only sleeping. And Jack? Jack was not mine. He was still a man from another life. A life I didn't belong to. So I told him one day, "Ba, you should stop coming." He looked at me, quiet. "Why? Because you will get hurt." Jack nodded slowly. "Ba, you're probably right." Then he said, But I'd rather get hurt doing something I believe in than be safe doing nothing." I didn't know how to answer. So I didn't. But I let him stay a little longer that day. And when he left, I watched his car until it disappeared behind the trees. I was still in love. Not yet. But I had found something like hope. And hope is what breaks you open after the storm. The sky had begun to warm earlier each day. The wind softened, the trees bloomed in secret, and the air smelled like rain waiting to fall. I had started to laugh again. Not often, but sometimes I would catch myself humming while boiling water, or smiling as my son babbled nonsense, his chubby fingers chasing butterflies near the edge of the woods. Jack was still there, not every day but enough. Sometimes he brought food, sometimes he brought books, blankets, medicine. Sometimes he brought nothing but time, and that was the most precious of all. We never said what we were. There was no need. He was presence, kindness, a quiet space in a world that had never once been quiet for me. But peace is a fragile thing, and happiness always makes you nervous when you've known too much pain. It started with the footprints. One morning, I went to the stream and saw them, bootmarks in the mud, heavy, deep, fresh, not Jackin. He wore hiking shoes. These were bigger, cruder. I looked around holding my son close. Nothing seemed out of place, but I felt watched. That night, I didn't sleep. I listened to every branch snap, every leaf move. The wind scratched the roof like claws. I wrapped my son in my shawl, held him tighter, and stared into the dark until dawn broke. I didn't tell Jet at first. I didn't want him to worry. But part of me, Lou, the part that never stopped listening for danger, they were looking for me. A few days later, it was confirmed. Jack had gone to town for supplies. When he returned, his face was pale. There are men asking questions, Bao he said, but about a young woman who disappeared with a child. They showed your photo. My stomach dropped. Hi, have been to the police? One of them is your husband. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I just sat letting the words settle into my bones like cold rain. He continued carefully. Hey, they're not just angry. They are humiliated, especially him. He said you made him a fool, that he wants to bring me back. Like I was stolen property, like I was a cow that wandered from the pen. I could feel it, the old fear curling inside me like smoke. But alongside it, anger. I had run, I had survived, I had become someone again. And now the shadows were coming to pull me back into the pit I had crawled out of. Jack didn't try to stop me when I packed a small bag. He didn't ask where I was going. He simply said, Mon, you don't have to run again. Not alone. I looked at him. Yet he whispered, but they don't live in your world. They don't follow your rules. I live in yours now, Mogam, he said. We moved carefully for the next few days. We changed our routines. He taught me how to cover our tracks in the forest. I taught him how to hear the difference between a bird call and a signal. We were preparing land not for a fight, but for survival. And through it all, he never looked at me with pity, only trust, as if I were not a broken woman, but a warrior who had already faced the worst. Then, one evening, just as the sun dipped behind the ridge, it happened. Voices, vibrant, rising, male, loud, drunk on anger. I saw torches through the trees. 3, maybe 4 men. I grabbed my son, heart pounding. Jack moved beside me, fast but calm. We didn't have time to run far, but we didn't need to. He led us behind the stream down a hollow I had never noticed, a narrow space between 2 stones hidden by bramble soaked with shadow. We stayed there for hours. My son slept in my arms. Jack never moved, eyes watching every flicker of light through the branches. I thought you'd be terrified, but I was though, because I was no longer alone. Eventually, the voices faded, the flames disappeared, but I knew it was over. They would come again and again, until they either found me or gave up, and I wasn't sure which would come first. That night I made a decision. I looked at Jack across the dying campfire. His face was tired but strong. I can't keep hiding, I said. He nodded slowly. But what do you want to do? I want to fight, not with fists, but with truth, with light. He didn't speak, just reached into his bag and pulled out his camera. Were you ready? We said. Bình than, let the world see. And so I told my story. I sat before his lens and spoke, not with fear, but with fire. About being forced to marry, about how escape was not weakness, but courage. And then I looked directly into the camera and said, I am not missing. I am not stolen. I am free, yet uploaded the video the next day. We used a signal from a hilltop an hour hike away. He posted it anonymously, with subtitles in 2 languages. We didn't expect much, but the world listened. Within days, the video was shared by thousands, then millions. Women began writing messages from all over the country, then beyond. I see you. I was you. You gave me strength. And the men, the ones who once hunted me, now had to face a mirror they could to look into. We didn't look back to the house. It wasn't safe anymore, but we didn't run blindly either. We moved forward, lead step by step, lead toward a future I had never thought possible. One where I could walk in daylight, one where I could raise my son to be kind, one where I could choose who I let into my life. And yet he never claimed me, never tried to become my savior. He simply walked beside me. And in a world that once wanted me silent, invisible, and afraid, that was the loudest kind of love I had ever known.